If you've ever been dismissed by your own family while they got everything handed to them, hit that like button and subscribe right now. You're not going to want to miss what happened next. My name is Marcus, and for 28 years I'd been the family joke. The artistic one. The one who never applied himself. The disappointment who chose photography over law school, who rented a studio apartment instead of buying property, who drove a 10-year-old Civic while my brother Trevor cruised around in his leased BMW. Trevor was the golden child. Stanford MBA. Corporate lawyer. Married to Amanda, a pediatric surgeon. They lived in a 4,200 square foot house in Tarrytown that Mom never shut up about. Meanwhile, I lived in a 600 square foot studio in East Austin that Mom described as Marcus's little artist phase that's lasted a decade. The family dynamics crystallized at every holiday dinner. Trevor would talk about his cases, his billable hours, his country club membership. Amanda would discuss her surgeries, her hospital politics, her charity galas. Me. I'd mention a photography project and Mom would pat my hand like I was a child showing her a crayon drawing. "That's nice, dear," she'd say, then immediately turn to Trevor. "Tell us more about the Henderson merger." Dad was more subtle, but the disappointment radiated from him like heat from asphalt in July. He'd been a real estate developer his entire life. Built a small empire in Austin from nothing. 8 rental properties generating steady income, a development company that had shaped 3 neighborhoods. He'd wanted both sons in the business. Trevor went into law to handle the legal side. I went to art school. Photography, Dad had said when I told him, his voice flat. "You're choosing photography." "It's what I love, Dad." "Love doesn't pay mortgages, Marcus." That was 15 years ago. The disappointment had only calcified since then. But here's what they didn't know, what none of them knew. Grandpa John had seen something in me they couldn't. Before he died in 2019, he'd pulled me aside at his 90th birthday party. "You've got your grandmother's eye," he'd said, his weathered hand gripping mine. "She saw beauty in things other people overlooked. Made a fortune in antiques because of it. You've got that same gift." "Thanks, Grandpa. I'm not just blowing smoke, boy. I see what you're building. That website of yours, those corporate clients. You're doing it quiet, doing it right. Not like Trevor, announcing every damn win like he's curing cancer." 2 weeks later, Grandpa John called me to his lawyer's office. What he did there changed everything, but I told no one. Not a single soul. "This stays between us," Grandpa had said, his blue eyes sharp despite his age. "I want to see who actually loves you and who just tolerates you. Understand?" I understood. While my family saw a struggling artist, I'd built something else entirely. It started with wedding photography. The basic stuff everyone assumes is your whole business. 50 weddings a year at $3,000 each. Decent money, but nothing impressive to people like my father. But wedding photography was just the storefront. The real business was corporate and commercial work. Fortune 500 companies paying $15,000 to $45,000 per shoot. Architectural firms needing $30,000 campaigns for their luxury developments. Tech companies in the domain paying $60,000 for their website and marketing materials. By 2020, Marcus Chin Photography LLC was grossing $2.1 million annually. By 2023, $3.8 million. I had a team of 12 photographers working under me, a studio manager, 2 digital editors, and a business manager handling the corporate accounts. But I kept my studio apartment. Kept my old Civic. Kept showing up to family dinners in jeans and t-shirts while Trevor wore his tailored suits. I let them think what they wanted to think. Because Grandpa John was right. I needed to see who they really were. The answer became crystal clear when Dad got his cancer diagnosis in January. Stage 4 pancreatic. 6 months, maybe 8 if the treatment worked. It didn't work. Trevor immediately started positioning himself as the grieving son. The responsible one who'd handle everything. He took over Dad's medical decisions, his business operations, his financial affairs. Mom praised him constantly for stepping up. "Thank God we have Trevor," she'd say, dabbing her eyes. "I don't know what we'd do without someone competent in charge." I visited Dad 3 times a week. Sat with him for hours. Held his hand when the pain got bad. Listened to his stories about building his first fourplex in 1987. Showed him photos from my recent shoots. A semiconductor plant in Round Rock, the new Tesla facility, downtown high-rises at Golden Hour. "These are good, Marcus," he'd said once, studying my iPad with the focus he usually reserved for blueprints. "Really good. You've got an eye for lines and light." "Thanks, Dad. I'm sorry I never really understood what you were doing." "It's okay." "No, it's not." His hand trembled slightly. "I saw failure because I was looking for it. That's on me, not you." We never got to finish that conversation. Trevor burst in, talking loudly about estate planning, about how he'd been meeting with lawyers, about how we needed to protect Dad's legacy. Dad died on a Tuesday in August. The funeral was massive. Everyone from the Austin real estate community showed up. Trevor gave a eulogy about carrying on Dad's vision. Amanda stood beside him in perfect widow-adjacent black. Mom sobbed loudly in the front row. I sat in the back and said nothing. The inheritance meeting was scheduled for September 15th, exactly 3 weeks after the funeral. Mom wanted it at the house, the big Westlake property Dad had built in 1995. Trevor insisted on having Dad's lawyer present, plus an estate accountant. I showed up in jeans and a button-down shirt. Trevor wore a charcoal suit that probably cost $2,000. Amanda sat beside him in a cream-colored dress, her hand possessively on Trevor's arm. Mom sat at the head of the dining table, Dad's empty chair beside her like a ghost. The lawyer, Richard Morrison, sat across from me with a leather portfolio. The accountant, a thin woman named Patricia, had a laptop open and 3 inches of printouts beside her. "Thank you all for coming," Richard began, his voice professionally somber. "We're here to execute Thomas Chen's last will and testament, dated March 18, 2024. Trevor leaned forward, his fingers steepled. The position of a man who already knows he's won. Richard opened the portfolio. Thomas's estate consists primarily of his 8 rental properties in Austin, with a combined assessed value of approximately $4.2 million. There's also a business account with $175,000 and a personal savings account with $83,000. The properties are the key asset, Trevor interjected smoothly. I've already been managing them for the past 6 months, handling the tenant issues, the maintenance, the finances. Dad and I discussed transition planning extensively. I'm sure he appreciated that, Richard said carefully. He wanted continuity, Trevor continued. Someone who understands real estate, who has the legal background to handle the complexities. Someone who won't let the properties deteriorate or the business fall apart. His eyes flicked to me. The implication was nuclear obvious. Amanda squeezed his arm supportively. Mom nodded slowly, tears forming again. Shall we proceed with the reading? Richard asked. Please, Mom whispered. Richard cleared his throat and began reading. Dad's will was straightforward. Personal effects to Mom, some cash gifts to various charities, and then the main clause. I leave my 8 rental properties and associated business operations to my son Trevor Daniel Chen, trusting in his judgment and capability to maintain and grow this legacy that I spent my life building. The words hung in the air like smoke. Trevor sat back, his expression carefully neutral but satisfaction radiating from every pore. I'll honor that trust, Mom. I promise. I know you will, sweetheart. Mom reached across the table to grip his hand. Amanda actually smiled. A small, triumphant curve of her lips. Patricia, the accountant, shifted uncomfortably, her eyes on her laptop screen. Richard looked at me. Marcus, your father left you his photography equipment and his collection of vintage cameras. He noted that you'd appreciate them more than a monetary gift. $20,000 in cameras, maybe, versus $4.2 million in properties. The message was clear. You're the artistic one, take the art stuff. Drop a comment and let me know where you're watching from tonight. Trevor leaned forward again. Actually, there's something we need to discuss. Patricia has identified some irregularities in the property accounts. Irregularities? I asked quietly. Over the past 3 years, Patricia said, her voice strained, there have been systematic withdrawals from the rental income accounts. Approximately $260,000 total. The money went to an account we haven't been able to trace. All eyes turned to me. Marcus, Mom said, her voice breaking. Tell me you didn't. Didn't what? Steal from your father, Trevor said flatly. While he was sick. While he trusted you to visit him. The accusation was so outrageous it took me a moment to process it. You think I stole from Dad? The timeline matches your visits, Trevor said, pulling out his own folder. I've documented every withdrawal. They correspond almost exactly with the days you had access to Dad's office, his computer, his files. This is insane. Is it? Amanda chimed in, her doctor voice clinical and cutting. You've been living in that tiny apartment for 10 years. Never any visible income. Always wearing the same clothes. Maybe you got desperate. I have a business. A wedding photography side hustle, Trevor interrupted. We know what that pays, Marcus. 50 weddings a year at maybe $3,000 each? That's $150,000 gross, probably $80,000 after expenses. Barely enough to live on. He had the numbers almost exactly right, which meant he'd researched it. Those withdrawals, Mom said, her voice hollow. All that money. Your father worked so hard. I didn't take anything, I said calmly. Then where did the money go? Trevor demanded. Patricia has traced the accounts. The money disappeared. And you're the only person besides Dad who had access to his office during that period. Richard Morrison looked deeply uncomfortable. Perhaps we should involve the police. No, Mom said quickly. No police. Not yet. Marcus, just tell us the truth. Did you take the money? I looked at each of them. Mom, her face aged by grief and now shock. Trevor, barely containing his satisfaction. Amanda, her expression a perfect mask of concern that didn't reach her eyes. Patricia, staring at her laptop like it held the answers. Richard, his lawyer instincts screaming that something was wrong here. I didn't take anything, I repeated. Then you won't mind if we bring in a forensic accountant, Trevor said. Or if we file a police report. Because Patricia's findings are preliminary. A real investigation will find where that money went. He slid a document across the table. I've prepared a confession statement. Sign it, agree to return the money, and we'll keep this in the family. No criminal charges. You'll just be removed from any future inheritance considerations. The document was actually professionally prepared. Trevor had planned this. Sign it, Marcus, Mom pleaded. Make this right. I looked at the confession statement. At Trevor's satisfied face. At the lawyer's discomfort. At the accountant's confusion. Then I reached into my messenger bag and pulled out my own folder. A thick one, professional bound, with tabs and page markers. I placed it gently on the table. Before I sign anything, I said quietly, I think you should all see this. Trevor's smile faltered. Just barely, just for a second, but I saw it. I opened the folder to the first tab. These are the trust documents that Grandpa John executed on April 12, 2019. 5 months before he died. I slid the first page to Richard. His eyes widened as he read. Grandpa John transferred all 8 rental properties to me in 2019, I said calmly. The deeds were filed with Travis County that same month. Public record. You can verify it right now. The silence was absolute. That's impossible, Trevor said, but his voice had gone thin. Page 4 shows the deed transfers. Page 8 shows the title insurance. Page 12 shows the property tax records in my name since 2019. I turned the pages methodically. The properties have been mine for 5 years. I've been paying the taxes, carrying the insurance, handling the actual management. But Dad's will, Mom stammered. Dad's will left Trevor properties that Dad didn't own anymore, I said. He couldn't leave Trevor what was already mine. Richard was speed reading the documents, his face going pale. These appear to be legitimate. The recording numbers, the notary seals, the title company stamps. Call Travis County Records, I said. Recording numbers are right there. This will take you 5 minutes to verify. Patricia was already typing on her laptop, her fingers flying. Oh my God, she breathed. He's right. The properties are recorded in Marcus Chen's name as of April 2019. All 8 of them. Trevor's face had drained of color. Why would Grandpa do that? Because he wanted to see who actually cared about me, I said simply. He told me to keep it quiet. To see how you all treated me when you thought I had nothing. I turned to the second tab. Now, about that missing $260,000. Trevor's hands gripped the table edge. Those weren't withdrawals, I said. Those were rental payments being deposited into the correct account. Mine. Because I own the properties. Patricia, you were looking at Dad's old business account, wondering where the money went. It went to the property owner. Me. I slid another document across. These are my business bank statements for Marcus Chin Property Management LLC. Every deposit matches the dates Patricia flagged. Because tenants were paying rent to the actual owner. Patricia stared at her screen, then at my documents, then back at her screen. The amounts match exactly, she whispered. So when you accused me of theft, I said, looking directly at Trevor, you were actually describing yourself. You've been trying to claim properties you don't own. That's fraud. I didn't know, Trevor started. You didn't know because you never asked. You assumed. You saw what you wanted to see, a failure of a brother you could blame for your scheme. I turned to the third tab and my voice got colder. But here's the interesting part. Patricia, you said you found irregularities. Did you find the other irregularities? She looked confused. Other. The withdrawals from the property's maintenance reserve accounts. The ones that went to an LLC registered to Amanda Chin. Amanda's face went white. Between 2022 and 2024, someone systematically drained $127,000 from the property maintenance reserves. I noticed it 6 months ago because I actually review my property accounts monthly. I hired a forensic accountant, a real one, and they traced every penny. I placed another document on the table. The money went to Luxury Medical Consulting LLC, registered to Amanda. Except there's no consulting business. It's just a shell company. That's not, Amanda started, but her voice cracked. I have the bank records, the wire transfer authorizations. And they're all signed with a digital signature, using Dad's login credentials. I looked at Trevor. The ones you had access to as his power of attorney. The silence was crushing now. Hit that subscribe button if you've ever had to set boundaries with toxic family, because what happened next was nuclear. Richard Morrison had gone from uncomfortable to horrified. This is attorney fraud. Identity theft. Embezzlement. It's also why I installed security cameras in Dad's office 8 months ago, I said. When I noticed the first suspicious withdrawal. I have footage of Trevor accessing Dad's computer after hours, using Dad's password, initiating wire transfers. Trevor stood up abruptly, his chair scraping back. This is bullshit. You're making this up. Sit down, Mr. Chin, a new voice said from the doorway. We all turned. 2 people stood there. A man in his 50s wearing a suit and a woman in her 40s with a badge clipped to her belt. I'm Special Agent Victoria Hart with the FBI's Financial Crimes Unit, the woman said. This is Assistant District Attorney James Chin. No relation. We've been investigating financial elder abuse allegations involving Thomas Chen's estate. FBI. Mom whispered. Marcus contacted us 3 weeks ago, Agent Hart said, walking into the room. He provided documentation of systematic financial exploitation of his elderly father, including identity theft, wire fraud, and embezzlement. She looked at Trevor and Amanda. We've spent the past 3 weeks verifying his evidence. Every document checks out. Every bank record confirms the allegations. Trevor's face had gone from pale to gray. Amanda was shaking visibly. Trevor Daniel Chin and Amanda Rachel Chin, Agent Hart continued. You're both under arrest for conspiracy to commit wire fraud, identity theft, and exploitation of an elderly person. These are federal charges. Wait, Trevor said, but 2 more agents I hadn't seen entered the room with handcuffs. You have the right to remain silent, one of them began. The next 5 minutes were chaos. Trevor shouting about lawyers, about mistakes, about how I'd set him up. Amanda crying, her perfect composure shattered, mascara streaming down her face. Mom sitting frozen in shock, unable to process what was happening. Richard Morrison looked like he'd aged 10 years in 10 minutes. Patricia was quietly closing her laptop, her face carefully neutral. The agents led Trevor and Amanda out in handcuffs. Trevor's last look at me was pure hatred mixed with disbelief. Agent Hart remained behind. Mr. Chin, Marcus, we'll need you to come downtown tomorrow to sign your formal statement. But I wanted to thank you personally. Financial elder abuse cases are incredibly difficult to prosecute. Your documentation made this possible. My grandfather taught me, I said. Paper beats promises every single time. After the agents left, the dining room felt like a tomb. Mom sat staring at her hands. Richard was gathering his papers with shaking fingers. Patricia had already slipped out. You set him up, Mom said finally, her voice hollow. Your own brother. No, I said quietly. Trevor set himself up. I just documented it. You could have told us. Told us about the properties, about what Grandpa did. Would you have believed me? I asked. Before today, if I'd told you I owned 8 properties worth $4.2 million, would you have believed me? Or would you have laughed? She didn't answer. He didn't have to. Grandpa John wanted me to see who you all really were, I said. He wanted me to know if you loved me or just tolerated me. Now I know. Marcus. I listened to you praise Trevor for years. The golden child. The responsible one. I watched you dismiss everything I did as a phase or a hobby. I sat through dinners where my accomplishments were footnotes and his were headline news. We didn't mean. Yes, you did. I stood up, gathering my folder. You meant every word. Every dismissive comment. Every disappointed look. You believed I was nothing because that's what you wanted to believe. What happens now? She asked, her voice small. Now. I picked up my bag. Now Trevor and Amanda are facing federal charges. The prosecutor thinks they'll get 3 to 7 years each. Their assets will be seized to pay restitution. Their reputations are destroyed. And us. That's up to you, Mom. I own 8 rental properties worth $4.2 million. I own a photography business that grosses $3.8 million annually. I have a real estate portfolio worth another $1.7 million that I've been building since 2019. I'm doing fine. Her eyes widened. You're worth about $9 million, give or take. I shrugged. Could be more. I stopped counting. Why didn't you tell us? Because Grandpa John was right. I needed to see who loved me and who just tolerated me. I needed to know if you'd value me without money. I moved toward the door. How I know. Marcus, please. I'm not cutting you off, Mom. But I'm done begging for a place at this table. I'm done being the punchline. I'm done pretending to be less than I am so you feel comfortable dismissing me. What do you want from me? I want you to think about the last 10 years. About every time you praised Trevor and patronized me. About every time you chose his version of success over mine. About every time you made me feel small. I paused at the doorway. Then, if you want a relationship with me, we build a new one. One based on who I actually am, not who you wanted me to be. I don't know if I can. Then you have your answer, I said quietly. I'll be around, Mom. When you're ready to see me, really see me, call me. But I'm done auditioning for your approval. I left her sitting at the table in the house Dad built, surrounded by the wreckage of her golden child's fall. The immediate aftermath was brutal for Trevor and Amanda. Their arrests made the local news. Prominent Austin lawyer charged with elder fraud. The legal community was small and vicious. Trevor's firm fired him within 48 hours. Amanda's hospital placed her on immediate suspension, then terminated her contract when the full scope of the charges became clear. Their Terrytown house went on the market within a week. They needed money for legal defense. It sold in 3 days for $2.1 million, most of which went to their attorneys. Trevor's BMW was repossessed. Amanda's Mercedes followed. Their country club membership was quietly revoked. The trial was set for February, 8 months away. The federal prosecutor had offered them a plea deal. 5 years each, full restitution and permanent prohibition from practicing law or medicine. Trevor rejected it, insisting they'd fight the charges. That was a mistake. By November, Trevor's legal defense fund had run dry. He'd burned through $400,000 in attorney fees and the trial hadn't even started. He called me once around Thanksgiving. Marcus, he said, his voice hollow. I need to talk to you. I'm listening. I'm sorry. For everything. For not seeing what you'd built. For assuming you'd stolen. His voice broke. I fucked up. I know that. But we're family. Are we? Please. Amanda's pregnant. We're going to lose everything. I can't go to prison with a baby coming. You should have thought about that before committing federal fraud. Marcus, please. Take the plea deal, Trevor. 5 years is better than the 10 to 15 you'll get at trial. Serve your time. Make restitution. Then figure out who you actually are without Dad's shadow. I can't. Yes, you can. You're going to have to. I paused. I'm not going to save you from the consequences of your choices. But when you get out, if you've actually changed, we can talk. He hung up. He took the plea deal 2 weeks later. Amanda took a separate deal. 3 years because she cooperated and testified about Trevor's manipulation. They were sentenced in January. Trevor got 5 years at a minimum security federal facility. Amanda got 3. Their baby was born in March, and Amanda's mother took custody while Amanda served her sentence. Mom stopped calling me after Thanksgiving. She tried a few times in September and October, but the conversations were strained, full of her justifications and my boundaries. Eventually she stopped trying. I moved out of my studio apartment in December. Bought a 3,200 square foot home in the Mueller development. 3 bedrooms, home office, photography studio space. Modern design, all windows and light. The antithesis of Dad's heavy traditional style. My business kept growing. $4.2 million in 2024. I hired 6 more photographers, opened a second studio in Houston, started doing commercial work for California tech companies flying me out for shoots. The rental properties kept generating income. $47,000 monthly gross across all 8 properties. I hired a professional property management company to handle the day-to-day. Let them deal with tenant calls and maintenance requests. I just reviewed the monthly reports and approved major expenditures. I started dating Sarah in February. She was an architect I'd photographed for a magazine spread. She knew nothing about my family drama, just saw me for who I was. We took things slow, had dinner every week, explored Austin together. No pressure, no expectations. Grandpa John's wisdom echoed constantly, let people show you who they are. In April, 1 year after the arrest, I received a letter from Mom. Handwritten, 12 pages. She'd been in therapy, working through her role in the family dynamics. Understanding how she'd enabled Trevor's entitlement and dismissed my accomplishments. Recognizing her own failures as a mother. I don't expect forgiveness, she wrote. I don't deserve it. But I want you to know that I see you now. Really see you. And I'm proud of the man you've become despite how I treated you, not because of it. I didn't respond immediately. Sat with the letter for 2 weeks. Read it multiple times. Thought about whether I wanted to rebuild that bridge. Eventually I called her. We met for coffee, neutral ground, public place, 1 hour. I'm not ready to forgive you, I told her. But I'm willing to see if we can build something new. That's more than I deserve, she said, tears in her eyes. It's not about deserving. It's about whether you're actually willing to change. We've been meeting once a month since then. Coffee, sometimes lunch. Short conversations, careful boundaries. She asks about my business now, actually listens to the answers. She's met Sarah, been respectful and kind. She doesn't mention Trevor unless I bring him up. It's not the mother-son relationship either of us imagined. But it's honest. And that's more than we ever had before. If you've ever had to walk away from toxic family to save yourself, tell me your story in the comments. What would you have done in my situation? Would you have exposed them or kept the peace? Trevor's scheduled to be released in 2029. He'll be 42, a convicted felon unable to practice law. He sends letters sometimes. They arrive addressed to my old studio apartment, forwarded to my house. I read them occasionally. They're full of remorse and self-pity in equal measure. I haven't responded to any of them. Maybe I will someday. Maybe I won't. Amanda gets out in 2027. I heard through mutual acquaintances that she's been a model prisoner, taking courses, working in the prison library. Her daughter is 4 now, being raised by Amanda's mother. Whether Amanda will get custody back is unclear. The rental properties are worth $5.8 million now. Austin real estate keeps climbing. My photography business hit $5.1 million last year. My investment portfolio passed $3 million. I'm 32 years old and financially secure in ways my father never imagined for me. But the money isn't the point. It never was. The point was being seen. Being valued for who I actually was, not who they wanted me to be. The point was learning that respect isn't owed by blood. It's earned through action. Grandpa John knew that. He'd spent 90 years watching family dynamics, understanding human nature. He'd given me the greatest gift possible. The truth about who loved me and who just tolerated me. The inheritance wasn't the properties. The inheritance was the lesson. Let them show you who they are, he told me. Then believe them. I believed them. And in doing so I freed myself. Last week I closed on a 9th rental property. A 4-plex in East Austin, the neighborhood Dad started in 40 years ago. I'm slowly building my own legacy, one property at a time, one photograph at a time, one authentic relationship at a time. Trevor thought he was inheriting an empire. What he got was a prison sentence and a life lesson. You can't build anything real on a foundation of lies. I'm building something real now. A business that reflects my vision. Properties that generate actual wealth. Relationships based on mutual respect. A life that's authentically mine. The golden child fell. The scapegoat rose. And in the end, the only inheritance that mattered was the one that taught me my own worth. That lesson was worth more than 8 properties, more than $9 million, more than all the approval I'd spent 28 years chasing. Grandpa John was right. Paper beats promises every single time. But truth? Truth beats everything.